Mechanical beasts, their joints creaking and claws scraping against the corroded hull, emerged from the depths like specters of destruction. Their glowing red eyes cutting through the murk. Kael's breath came steady through his regulator, his gaze sharp behind the fogged visor of his reinforced diving suit. He signaled silently to his crew, a series of precise hand gestures that carried their weight in urgent meaning. Mira was first to move, her lithe form weaving through the narrow gaps between decayed beams and shattered panels. Her fiery hair, muted beneath the water, still seemed to burn with the same fierce spirit that had propelled her from Steelbone's docks to this desperate battlefield. She struck with practiced precision, disabling a mechanical beast's limb with a swift, calculated strike that sent sparks scattering through the water like fleeting stars. Behind her, Joran's fingers danced over a portable hacking device, coaxing long-dormant ancient machinery to life. His cracked glasses caught the faint light as he activated a trap, a net of electrified cables that ensnared another beast, rendering it motionless. The wreck groaned under the strain of battle, metal plates buckling and twisted beams shifting with ominous creaks. Grav's broad shoulders and steady hands wielded heavy weapons with brutal efficiency, blasting apart the monstrosities that threatened to overwhelm them. Lena moved calmly among the chaos. Her satchel of herbs and first aid supplies a lifeline to those wounded in the relentless fight. Her warm presence, even under the crushing pressure of the abyss, offered a fragile sense of hope and humanity. Kael's mind raced, calculating every move, every risk. The warden's shadow loomed closer, a towering figure clad in patchwork armor, crimson lenses gleaming like malevolent eyes. Their duel was a clash of wills as much as weapons. Each strike Kael parried was a test of endurance and resolve. The wreck around them trembled, the sea's pressure pressing from all sides, as if the ocean itself sought to crush their defiance. In a moment of harrowing clarity, Kael made a choice that would etch itself into the hearts of his crew. With a fierce cry muffled by the water, he sacrificed his own safety to shield Mira and Joran from a devastating blast. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the wreck, metal screeching and cracking as the structure began to collapse. The crew rallied, inspired by Kael's courage, pushing forward with renewed vigor. The warden faltered, his mechanical beasts falling one by one as the artifact, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light, was finally claimed. The aftermath was heavy with loss. Survivors clung to one another in the dim light beneath the sea, their breaths ragged but hearts steeled by the shared ordeal. The artifact's power pulsed like a heartbeat, a promise of salvation for Steelbone, yet tempered by the scars carved into their souls. As they ascended from the depths, the weight of sacrifice settled over them like a shroud, but so too did a fierce, bittersweet determination to endure. Above, the toxic sea stretched endlessly, its harsh winds whispering of trials yet to come. But beneath the waves, in the shattered wreck, a new chapter had begun, one forged in courage, camaraderie, and the unyielding will to survive. "We carry more than just this artifact," Kael whispered to Myra as they broke the surface. "We carry each other. That is our true salvation." And with that, the crew set their course back to Steelbone, their found family bound tighter than ever, ready to face the uncertain dawn. Kael sat perched on a rusted beam jutting from the shattered remains of the underwater wreck, his gaze lost among the twisted metal and murky depths. The eerie quiet was a stark contrast to the chaos of battle that had so recently engulfed them. Around him, the toxic sea shimmered faintly, a poisonous halo casting an otherworldly glow that seemed to mock the fragility of their victory. His hands trembled slightly as he clenched them together, knuckles white against the chill that seemed to seep not just from the sea, but from within. The weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders, heavier than any mechanical beast they had faced. The faces of those who would not return haunted him, comrades fallen to the Warden's relentless assault, sacrifices made to claim the artifact that now rested secured within their vessel. Kael, a soft voice called, pulling him from the depths of his thoughts. Lena approached quietly, her satchel of herbs swinging gently at her side. Her sun-kissed skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her warm eyes held a gentle insistence that he rise from his solitude. He nodded slowly, rising with a weary sigh. The two made their way back to the ship, where Myra was already tending to the wounded. The cramped space smelled of antiseptics and burnt oil, a harsh reminder of the battle's ferocity. Mira's fiery hair was damp with sweat, strands sticking to her face as she worked with practiced efficiency. Her green eyes, sharp but softer now in the presence of vulnerability. "Any new injuries?" Kael asked quietly, his voice rough. Lena shook her head. "No new wounds, but the old ones still need care. And the losses, we have to find a way to carry them with us without breaking." Mira glanced up, her usual defiance softened by fatigue. "They fought for us, for Steelbone. We owe them that much." Joran sat nearby, his slender fingers trembling as he handled salvaged data modules recovered from the wreck. His cracked glasses reflected the flickering light of the ship's console, shadows dancing across his pale face. Each piece of information he uncovered deepened his understanding of the artifacts, power, and the Warden's tragic past. A once protector, now consumed by fear and obsession. "Every discovery feels like a weight added to my chest," Joran admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But it's also a beacon, a reason to keep going." Grav stood silently on deck, his broad shoulders hunched against the cold night air. His scarred face was etched with lines of fatigue and resolve. The glowing toxic sea spread out before him, endless and unforgiving. Yet, despite the exhaustion, his loyalty burned steady, a pillar for the crew to lean on. "We survived," Grav said simply, his voice gravelly but firm. "And that means we still have work to do." The crew gathered, the space between them filled with unspoken grief and the fragile threads of hope. Kael looked around at the faces, battered, weary, but unbroken. The cost had been high, but the victory had secured the artifact they needed to save Steelbone. Their found family, forged in fire and loss, had endured the worst and emerged stronger. Yet, as the toxic sea whispered its endless song beneath the stars, Kael knew their journey was far from over. The scars they bore were not just physical, but etched deep into their souls. Healing would be neither quick nor easy, but together they would face whatever came next, bound by survival, by trust, and the fierce determination that had carried them through the darkest depths. "Rest for now," Kael finally said, voice steady but soft. "Tomorrow, we begin the real work." And beneath the endless sky, the city of Steelbone awaited their return, fragile, adrift, but alive. The legacy of their sacrifice and courage would be written in the tides yet to come. The night closed in around them, a shroud of uncertainty and hope intertwined. The voyage had taken its toll, but it had also forged something unbreakable. As the crew settled into uneasy rest, the sea's whisper promised that the story was far from finished. Their greatest trials and their greatest triumphs still lay ahead. A faint glimmer of dawn teased the horizon, heralding a new day on the scrap sea. The cost of victory was etched in every weary breath, but so too was the promise of survival, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of Steelbone's found family. The air was thick with the acrid stench of chemical decay, but tonight, beneath a pallid, cloud-choked sky, there was an unusual stillness. Kael stood at the helm, the artifact cradled carefully in his hands, its faint luminescence casting flickering shadows over his weathered face. Around him, the crew gathered quietly, their eyes reflecting the pale glow, a beacon against the pervasive gloom. Myra shifted her weight at the prow, the sharp edges of her silhouette outlined by the errant flickers of greenish light that danced atop the toxic waves. Her fiery hair whipped about her face in the acrid wind, but her gaze remained fixed and unyielding, scanning the murky expanse for any sign of danger. Though the battle had left scars, both visible and unseen, her stance was resolute. She trusted Kael, even if he wrestled with his burdens silently. She trusted their bond forged in the furnace of adversity. Below deck, Jorin hunched over a battered workbench. The artifact's ancient mechanisms spread before him like a puzzle begging to be solved. His pale fingers brushed lightly over the intricate symbols etched into its surface, eyes sharp behind cracked lenses. The ambient hum of the ship's failing engines mingled with the faint, almost imperceptible pulse emanating from the artifact itself. As the minutes passed, the air seemed to shift, currents of the toxic sea outside growing less hostile, the acrid fog thinning imperceptibly. Jorin's breath hitched as the realization dawned. The artifact was not merely a relic. It was a key, a source of latent power that might yet tip the balance in their favor. Lena moved quietly through the cramped quarters, her hands steady as she tended to Tess's scraped arm. The young scout winced but smiled faintly under Lena's gentle ministrations. "You'll be ready for the next storm," Lena whispered, her voice a balm amid the harshness of their world. Nearby, Grav hammered steadily at a corroded hull plate, each clang a testament to his unyielding strength and dedication. The rhythmic echo was a heartbeat of resilience, a declaration that they would endure. Kael's thoughts drifted as he looked out over his crew, each member a vital thread in the fragile tapestry of their survival. The artifact's glow pulsed softly in his palm, a reminder of the immense stakes at hand. "This is only the beginning," he murmured to himself, voice low but resolute. They had secured a chance, however tenuous, to breathe new life into Steelbone. But the sea was vast and unforgiving, and the Warden's shadow still loomed large. As the ship pressed onward through the shifting mists, the crew shared quiet conversations, voices hushed yet hopeful, stories of loss intertwined with aspirations for renewal. Myra challenged Kael, gently on course decisions, their banter light but edged with mutual respect. Jorin's discoveries sparked new questions, fueling debates on the artifact's origins and potential. Lena's quiet optimism wove through their exchanges, a steady flame against the encroaching darkness. Night deepened, and the toxic sea's surface shimmered faintly beneath the artifact's glow. The oppressive weight of despair that had long hung over Steelbone seemed to lift, if only slightly. Somewhere in the distance, the faint roar of mechanical beasts echoed, a reminder of the dangers still to come, yet united by their shared purpose and the fragile promise in their hands. The crew faced the unknown with fierce, bittersweet determination. Kael tightened his grip on the artifact, his eyes scanning the horizon where faint, ghostly lights flickered signs of other survivors, perhaps, or new threats lurking in the toxic depths. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "we face it together." The words were a vow, a declaration of trust that he had only recently learned to voice aloud. Below deck, the artifact's pulse quickened, its light brightening as if responding to their resolve. The ship surged forward, cutting a path through the poisoned waters toward the distant promise of home. In that moment, amidst the creaking metal and whispered hopes, Steelbone's fate began to shift, fragile, uncertain, but undeniably alive. And as dawn threatened the horizon, the crew knew that their return voyage was not merely a journey home, but the first step toward a new beginning. The artifact, now embedded at the city's core, hummed with an energy that coursed through rusted pipes and worn gears, infusing life into the once dying engines. Sparks of blue and green light flickered across the control panels, illuminating the sweat and grime on Kael's face as he stood in the engine room. Around him, the crew moved with renewed purpose, their hands steady as they adjusted valves and aligned ancient cogs, coaxing the city back from the brink. Outside, the sprawling patchwork of steel and scrap that made up Steelbone seemed to breathe anew. The air, tinged with the sharp scent of oil and scorched metal, carried a promise of revival despite the ever-present haze from the toxic sea. Kael climbed a rickety scaffold overlooking the cityscape, the salty breeze tugging at his dark hair streaked with grey. Beside him stood Myra, her fiery red hair catching the faint glow, and Jorin, glasses perched askew as he scanned a worn schematic. "The engines are holding steady," Jorin reported, his voice tinged with cautious excitement. "If we keep this rhythm, we can start reinforcing the hull and expanding the energy conduits." Myra nodded, her piercing green eyes scanning the horizon beyond the city's limits. "We'll need to secure the scrap fields too. The Warden's forces won't just let us rebuild without a fight." Kael's gaze hardened, the weight of command settling once more on his shoulders. "Then we prepare. But first, we heal." The crew dispersed, each member taking on tasks vital to Steelbone's rebirth. In the communal gardens, a rare patch of green amidst the rust, Lena moved gracefully, her presence a balm to the weary hearts around her. Her satchel of herbs and salves was never far, and her gentle hands soothed both physical wounds and unseen scars. A soft murmur of gratitude followed her through the crowded workshops where plans were drawn and metal was reshaped. Grav's booming laughter echoed from the hull repair stations as he rallied the engineers. Sparks flew like fireflies in the dim light, welding seams and reinforcing weak points. His broad shoulders bore the scars of countless battles, but his spirit was indomitable. "We're not just fixing metal," he declared, "we're forging a future." As days turned to weeks, Steelbone transformed. The engine's steady pulse powered water recyclers and air purifiers, easing the harshness of the toxic atmosphere. Children played amid the scrap towers, their laughter a rare melody against the clatter of construction. The crew's found family, once fractured by fear and loss, grew stronger, bound by shared hardship and the fragile hope of survival. Yet beneath the surface, the sea's endless expanse whispered of dangers yet to come. The Warden's shadow loomed, reminders that Steelbone's revival was but a chapter in a longer struggle. Kael stood watch on the city's highest lookout, eyes scanning the horizon where sky met toxic waves. The artifact's power was a beacon, but also a target. Turning to Myra, he spoke quietly. "We've bought time, but the sea doesn't forgive weakness. We have to be ready." She met his gaze, a fierce determination flickering in her eyes. "Together, we rebuilt from scraps once. Well, do it again." Below, the city pulsed with life, a testament to resilience amid desolation. Steelbone was adrift, but unbroken, a beacon of hope on an endless, toxic sea. The journey was far from over, but for now, the city breathed, and with it, the unyielding spirit of those who called it home. From the vantage point of the old lookout platform, a patchwork of welded plates and weathered beams, Kael sat, his lean frame hunched against the chill creeping in with the evening. The toxic sea stretched endlessly beyond, its surface a restless mirror of orange and ash, disturbed only by the distant hum of the city's sputtering engines. Memories drifted through Kael's mind like ghost ships on the horizon. The faces of those lost, the clang of battles with mechanical beasts, the bitter sting of betrayal. He had carried these burdens alone for too long, shouldering the weight of leadership and guilt in silence. But tonight, beneath the fading light, the walls he so carefully built around himself began to crumble. Below, the city buzzed softly, voices mingling, laughter sparking amidst the weary. The crew was scattered in pockets of respite, each wrestling with their own ghosts and hopes. Myra was in the workshop, the scent of oil and metal thick in the air, her fiery hair pulled back as she methodically sharpened her blades. Her green eyes, fierce yet thoughtful, lingered over a worn photograph of her mentora, reminder of the losses that had shaped her relentless spirit. She no longer challenged Kael's decisions with blind fire, but with tempered resolve, a balance born of hard lessons. Joran, the quiet scholar among them, sat cross-legged on the floor of their cramped common room. Schematics and ancient tech artifacts surrounded him, illuminated by the soft glow of a salvaged lantern. His cracked glasses caught the light as he traced the intricate lines of the artifact's designs, his voice breaking the silence with newfound confidence as he shared revelations with Lena. She listened intently, her sun-kissed face radiating warmth and hope, the satchel of herbs at her side a symbol of healing, not just of wounds, but of fractured souls. Grav was out in the communal garden patch, his broad shoulders bent over a stubborn engine part. The metallic clang of his tools rang out, mingling with Lena's gentle tending of the herb beds nearby. Their conversation drifted from mechanical fixes to dreams for Steelbone's future, voices low and steady amidst the salty air and earthy scents. It was a rare moment of peace, a fragile thread of comfort woven through the scars of their journey. Kael finally rose from the lookout, the weight of silence broken by his steady footsteps. Gathering the crew, he spoke not with the iron will of command, but with the raw honesty of someone who had learned the cost of carrying burdens alone. He admitted his fears, his mistakes, the nights haunted by the faces of those he couldn't save. This vulnerability was unfamiliar, yet it was met not with judgment, but with understanding. The crew listened, the tension that had simmered beneath their unity dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Myra's usual fire softened. Joran's quiet confidence solidified. Lena's nurturing presence seemed to envelop them all, and Grav's pragmatic loyalty shone brighter. In that moment, Steelbone was more than a city adrift on a toxic sit, was a family forged through fire and loss, bound by trust and shared purpose. As night deepened, they sat together beneath the fractured sky, voices weaving stories of survival and hope. The lessons of their journey were clear. Leadership was not a solitary burden, but a shared strength. Trust was a fragile bloom that must be tended, and family could be found not just in blood, but in those who faced the storm by your side. Beyond the city's flickering lights, the toxic sea whispered its endless song, a reminder of the dangers still lurking and the uncertain future ahead. But within Steelbone's patchwork walls, a fierce, bittersweet determination burned brighter than ever. The crew had learned their lessons well, and though scars remained, they were ready to face whatever the endless sea might bring. As dawn approached, casting a pale light over the scrap city, Kael looked out once more over the horizon. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, hope felt tangibly steady flame against the dark. And with his crew beside him, he knew they would endure. The silence of the toxic sea was broken by a distant, faint, mechanical whir. Somewhere beyond the horizon, new challenges awaited. Yet Steelbone stood unbroken, its legacy carried forward by those who had learned to survive, not just by strength, but by heart. And so, beneath the trembling sky, The lessons learned whispered a promise of resilience, of unity, and of a future forged from the ashes of the past. The voyage continued, and with it, the story of Steelbone and its found family. The horizon held its secrets, but the crew's resolve shone clear. No matter the storms to come, they would face them together. The chapter closed on a lingering question, a quiet challenge to the soul. How would they carry these lessons forward? How would they protect the fragile hope that now pulsed through their veins? The answer lay just beyond the next tide, in the uncharted waters of their shared destiny.